If you've ever been paid by a customer or your employer through direct deposit, or you've paid a utility bill online, then you've seen the ACH network in action. Today we'll speak with a special guest from the organization that oversees all ACH payments in the U.S. and discuss how that works, what's currently happening with suppliers and their customers regarding ACH payments, and what's new for organizations around ACH as a whole. Next on this edition of the Savvy Report. Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Savvy Report. Today we're joined by Robert Unger, Senior Director, Product Management and Strategic Initiatives at NACHA, the Electronic Payments Association. Rob, welcome to the Savvy Report, and thanks for joining us. But please tell us a little bit about you, your background, and your journey to NACHA.
Sure, Ernie, and thanks for having me. Big fan of Receivable Savvy, so always a pleasure to work with you. So I am Senior Director of Product Management and Strategic Corporate Relations with NACHA, the Electronic Payments Association. So in that role, my job really is to work with businesses, develop resources, lead education efforts, and create products for all different size businesses. But my area of focus is mainly around consumer bill pay and business-to-business payments. While we do focus primarily on ACH, the overall goal really is to help businesses move from paper to electronics and improve efficiencies in order to cash, procure to pay, consumer bill payment, etc. And looking at, how do you get companies to move from paper to electronics? How do you get them to improve efficiencies? One thing that I work on a lot and have been developing resources around is really understanding business case and payment economics and the opportunities there, and also alert people to opportunities specifically with respect to the ACH, with leveraging standards and other kinds of product opportunities out there, directories, ISO 20022, all these things that are challenging the payments environment now, trying to help companies stay abreast of the technology and the opportunities.
For our audience members who may not know, how did NACHA actually come about, and how long has it been around?
NACHA's been around for, 44 years. It really started off back in the 1970s with the Air Force. The Air Force was looking a way to send payroll to a very distributed personnel. As you can imagine, Air Force personnel are all around the world, and how do you make those payments other than flying checks around? So it really started off as a direct deposit kind of function, and that is a big offering right now with respect to the ACH. A lot of people may not know the ACH, but they sure know direct deposit. So hopefully they're getting paid, and they're getting paid electronically. So NACHA has evolved as once upon a time it was the National Automated Clearinghouse Association, and now we are NACHA, the Electronic Payments Association. We're a nonprofit governing body for the ACH network. And there's two basic functions for NACHA. I'll call them rules and tools. So with respect to rules, we define all the roles, warranties, responsibilities, data formats for how everyone uses the ACH, whether it's for direct deposit, whether it's to have money taken out of your checking account every month to make a payment, for B2B bill payments, invoice payments, government tax payments, all those things. We develop what's called the NACHA rules, which really provides a framework for interoperability for use of the network. And some 23 billion transactions, 40 plus trillion, that's with a T, 40 plus trillion dollars a year flows through the network for all those kind of payments, direct deposit, government payments, B2B payments, all those kind of things. So one function, again, is the rules, and we enforce the rules as well. The other function we call the tools. So with the tools, that's where I work specifically, and that's trying to develop resources, and products to help businesses and banks utilize the ACH. So that's some quick history of NACHA there.
Well, when I mention to people who are not necessarily in this space that I'll be interviewing someone from NACHA, they ask me, what's a NACHA? So I tell them that if they receive their payroll check by direct deposit, or if they've been paid by a customer via ACH, then they have some familiarity with NACHA.
Right, that's how most people know NACHA.
Now, there have been some new developments with NACHA, in particular, same-day ACH payments. Tell us what these new developments are and why they would be important to organizations that receive payment from customers as well as customers in their efforts to pay suppliers more efficiently.
Sure. So again, the ACH network governed by NACHA is a payment network, just like Visa is a payment network, MasterCard is a payment network, of course. Those are owned and operated by Visa and MasterCard respectively. But with respect to the ACH has traditionally and still is a next day payment system. So for example, Ernie, if your company were to pay you by direct deposit and they sent the direct deposit to their bank today, you would receive it in your bank tomorrow. And that applies for all kinds of payments. And the ACH supports both credit payments. So direct deposit is an example of a credit payment where your company is pushing a payment to your bank account. But the ACH also supports debit payments where companies can pull funds from an account. And many people find that very convenient. So, for example, people may not want to deal with a bill, a power bill, for example. They could authorize the power company to withdraw that bill amount from their checking account every month based on an agreement. Right. So that's the basic functions of the ACH, kind of a next day payment system supporting both credits and debits. The ACH supports remittance information. And remittance information really is the information that accompanies a payment that describes what that payment is for. The customer making the payment, the account number, in case of B2B, deductions being taken, all that kind of stuff, so that companies can then apply the cash. So the ACH supports all that, and still supports all that. With respect to what you said, Ernie, there is a new development in the ACH, and that is same-day ACH. So same-day ACH really is the opportunity to have a payment be sent and received on the same day, probably in about 3 hours. So that's certainly an opportunity that companies can look at in terms of expedited payment options. When you think about use cases for payers, you think about things like emergency payroll. I never knew payroll was so problematic, but until same-day ACH, payroll companies that made a mistake or missed a deadline used to have to send all those payments out by wire. Now they have the opportunity to do a same-day ACH, so that's a big use case. Right. You think about other use cases around immediate due date payments, being able to correct errors and reinitiate payments, disbursement options. So where speed is important, certainly same-day ACH is an opportunity for payers, much cheaper than a wire, of course. With respect to receivers, it's a good way to encourage your customers and to let them know that ACH, same-day ACH, is an opportunity when they may need, again, speed is important and they need to make that payment faster. You think about use cases like a credit hold customer that, the company's not going to release goods or services until the payment is received. So you think about those and other kind of cases where speed is important. And so there's many benefits, and it's an opportunity now for both payers and receivers to send a quicker payment, to do it efficiently, and to do it at a lower cost. Right. And there's plenty of resources available from NACHA. If you go to NACHA.org and look up same-day ACH, there's so many resources available for people to better understand the implementation requirements. In fact, I would recommend businesses out there download the same-day ACH Essentials Guide for corporations. That's a pretty handy publication that points out the opportunities and the implementation considerations for using same-day ACH.
Rob, that's a good segue into my next question. So let's say I'm with an organization that's interested in having my customers pay me via ACH. And if we refer to our 2017 perception study, where we show that although 87% of respondents receive customer payment via paper check, only 26% prefer to be paid that way. On the other hand, about 60% of respondents indicated that they prefer to be paid via ACH. So as an organization, what can I do in addition to going to the NACHA website if I wanted to understand the steps needed to have my customers pay me this way? What options do I have at my disposal?
Yeah, Ernie, there's a range of kind of low-tech to high-tech kind of options there. And what you found in your perception study really corroborates what we found with a study we did in collaboration with the Credit Research Foundation. The Credit Research Foundation is an organization made up of companies, directors of credit from many of the large companies, and we did a benchmarking study with them last year and found that, similar to you, supplier organizations overwhelmingly prefer ACH. And we asked them too what their payments mix was 3 years ago, currently, and 3 years hence. And by payments mix, I mean, how many checks are they receiving, how many ACHs are they receiving, cards, wires, all that kind of thing. And we really see a tsunami of ACH and electronic payments coming this way, whereas in 3 years, the majority of payments will be electronic. And companies need to get ready for that. But still, you asked a very good question. How do you encourage customers to pay you by ACH? And what we found in that study with Credit Research Foundation is that there were 3 essential drivers. So one was an internal focus within the company on increasing ACH over check for all the reasons. Faster cash availability, less handling, less requirements around posting those payments, more traceability. All the advantages of electronic over paper are certainly strategic reasons why companies want to increase that ACH. So internal emphasis was one option. The increase in technology, making things easier, was another big driver for what we see as this tsunami of change. So in that case, I'm thinking about things like portals, where customers can do all their interactions electronically and have the connections between trading partners. That's a big opportunity. But the third big driver here in this tsunami of change was customers asking the suppliers to accept ACH. So the customers are pushing their suppliers to accept ACH. So with respect to that, you think about what can you do as a company to receive more ACH from your customers. One is listen to your customers, right? And when I think about low-tech solutions, it's very easy to have a phone call around that, because in a lot of cases, customers want to pay you by ACH and are trying to figure out how to do that. And what we found in the study, there are some best practices with respect to increasing ACH and improving cash application. One is when you're onboarding a new customer, negotiate. We found that organizations that have higher ACH tend to negotiate payment type with their customers. Another big important differentiator among high-performing and low-performing organizations in our Credit Research Foundation study really was that high-performing organizations track payment metrics. They know how much it costs to receive a payment and to apply the cash. And that's not just your bank fees, right? It's your all-in costs for supporting that payment type.
Right.
Setting goals is very important within the organization and providing some budget around that using standards, right? So it's one, I want to make sure that not only companies are receiving more ACH, but that they are receiving quality ACH. So what I mean by that is, it's great if you receive more ACH, but if your customers are sending remittance information in PDFs and email and faxes, that can really add costs as opposed to increase your efficiency. So make sure you leverage the standards as well that are available to allow for straight-through processing. So there's so many things that you can do within the company and with respect to communicating with your customer and working with your customer to increase ACH.
So you mentioned that you're working with customers who are encouraging their suppliers to accept ACH payment. Is that a relatively new phenomenon in terms of seeing more customers going the route of encouraging more suppliers to do this? Do you get sort of a sense from customers you work with that some suppliers are either reluctant or resistant? And if so, what might be the driver for the resistance?
I think this is a fairly more recent phenomenon that I'm hearing at conferences and from people we interact with, that AP wants to be more efficient as well, right? And so ACH offers a lot of efficiencies and cost savings over check for AP, and they're trying to drive their customers to accept that. I think I think suppliers generally want to listen to their customers, so that's a good motivation for companies in AR and credit and those departments that may be having a hard time with the business case. I think a key part of that business case is, hey, senior management, executive management, our customers are asking for this, and we need to be responsive, and we need to be on a level playing field with our competitors. So hopefully we can get AP and AR communicating together here and working together to improve the overall ecosystem.
Rob, thank you so much for joining us today. You provided some great insight, and I'm sure our viewers were able to glean some helpful insight in how to be paid more efficiently by their customers, or how to pay their suppliers more efficiently. And I'd love to have you come back again. Would you be open to joining us again in the next month or so?
You bet. Anytime, Ernie. Always love working with you.
Same here. And thanks again for your time. Enjoy your afternoon, and we'll talk again soon. Well, that's it for this edition of the Savvy Report. We hope you enjoyed our interview with Rob Unger of NACHA, and we look forward to seeing you again real soon.